Religious freedom has always been uniquely and beautifully celebrated in the United States. It is um, beginning to be eroded. How do you see it being eroded, and what do you think that looks like in the next 10, 20 years?
I think what's happening in the United States is a very sinister attack on religious freedom. They're testing us. How much are we willing to sacrifice? How much are we willing to abandon our right to freely worship, our right to publicly profess our faith or speak from a position of being a Christian? We're seeing that on college campuses. We're seeing that with uh, various bills that are being introduced. And if Christians don't speak out now, if we don't stand up now while we have a chance, while we can still fight it in the courts, while we still have a voice in the United States, I think the hostility toward Christians is only going to increase. And it won't be long before we see serious persecution.
Was what happened during COVID a test run of what some people would like to do on a larger scale and more permanently?
Absolutely. They were testing how willing are Christians, how readily is the church going to give up their right to worship, their right to assemble. In California, for example, we had our governor who actually told the church it is no longer legal for you to worship, to sing praises in a church service. And so Christians abandoned singing praise. That is mind blowing to me, Matthew, that we had the government telling Christians where, when, and where you can worship, and that the church went along with it. And I absolutely believe that what happened with COVID, we saw pastors arrested, we saw churches targeted during other activist movements that were happening during the time. Churches were targeted, and the government was not protecting the churches in these riots and various things that were happening. And I absolutely believe it was a test run to see, okay, how easy is it for us to take away the religious freedom and the protection of the church?
It seems we were completely ill prepared as a church for that moment. Do you think that has changed since COVID?
No, to be honest. Maybe yes and no. I think that some pastors, some churches stepped up to the plate. And we saw that when the church leaders did this, the congregation happily followed. That when the pastors and the priests and the bold church leaders took a stand and said, no, we're going to continue to hold worship services, or we are not going to accept these unjust mandates from the government, there was support from the sheep. And I think that the congregation is looking to our leaders to be bold. But unfortunately, many of our leaders were not bold. And so, do I think that we're better prepared? Yes and no. We know that it can happen now. But the real question is, are pastors, our priests, our church leaders, is the body of Christ any more bold than it
Mm,
was during that time?
fabulous insight, really powerful.